Cowabunga, dudes, and welcome to a totally excellent episode of Cinematic Excrement. Today we will look at the latest installment in a franchise that is almost as old as I am, the 2014 film simply titled Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Boy, did this movie piss off a lot of people. Critics hated it, many longtime fans of the franchise hated it, and it even picked up a Worst Picture nomination at the Razzies. Nevertheless, it somehow found an audience and managed to earn about $200 million at the American box office, making it the highest-grossing movie in the franchise. Until you adjust for inflation, then the original movie is still number one. It seemed like this movie was destined to be hated from the day its existence was publicly revealed. First, Paramount Pictures announced Michael Bay would be involved. Oh great, he already ruined the Transformers, now he has to take a shit on the Turtles too? We quickly learned Bay would only be producing the film through his Platinum Dunes company, and directing duties would actually be handled by Jonathan Liebsman. But fans were still understandably worried about just how much influence Bay would have on the production. But hey, maybe Liebsman would turn out to be a perfect fit for the director's chair. After all, this is the same guy who directed the Texas Chainsaw Massacre: The Beginning, Battle Los Angeles, and Wrath of the Titans. Wait. Oh dear. Things continued to get worse as more details leaked out. First, we learned the title of the movie would simply be Ninja Turtles. Yeah, no teenage or mutant in the title. Why? Because the Turtles would be aliens. Fucking aliens. Now, of course, the Turtles' origins have never been consistent. From the comics, to the cartoons, to the movies, to the video games, the story has always differed slightly. In some versions, Splinter is a human who mutates into a rat. In others, he's a rat from the beginning. Sometimes April O'Neil is a TV news reporter. Sometimes she's a scientist. But one thing that has been consistent is the Turtles have always been, well, turtles. Not aliens who look like turtles, but actual goddamn turtles that were mutated into the ass-kicking, pizza-eating dudes we all know and love. Sure, aliens have often played a part in the franchise, but making the Turtles themselves extraterrestrial sounds like a terrible idea. Oddly enough, the 1987 cartoon seems to have predicted this idea. And its stupidity.
Who are these mystery turtles? Could they be aliens from another planet?
What a bunch of airheads, man!
And the troubles didn't stop there. Fan reaction continued to boil over when the casting decisions were announced. First, we found out the iconic character April O'Neil would be played by Megan Fox. Of all the people they could have chosen to play April, this is what they went with. How is it that this woman has been able to have such a lengthy Hollywood career despite having no talent whatsoever? Oh, right, I remember now. Well, if that wasn't bad enough, they announced William Fichtner had been cast as the Turtles' nemesis, the Shredder. Now, don't get me wrong, Fichtner is a fine actor, but in previous incarnations, the Shredder has typically been Japanese. His name is Oroku Saki, for crying out loud. But this time around, the character would now be known as Eric Sachs, an obvious westernization of Oroku Saki. Can you say whitewashing, boys and girls? Well, the fans sure could, and they were none too pleased. And for the life of me, I cannot figure out how the filmmakers thought this idea would go over well. Surely they could have found a Japanese actor somewhere. Hell, Kevin Eastman, co-creator of the Turtles, suggested Ken Watanabe for the part, which actually would have been pretty awesome. But no, instead they went with William Fichtner. What were they thinking? Well, it seems cooler heads eventually prevailed as they made several changes to the film before it was released, although they still kept Megan Fox as April. The words teenage and mutant were added back into the title, although they apparently couldn't be bothered to change the original logo, they just tacked the other words on top of it. And of course, this meant the Turtles would once again be mutants and not aliens. Heaven and earth rejoice. And in a moment of self-deprecation, there's even a line in the film where they poke fun at the idea.
So they're aliens?
No, that's stupid.
As long as you know.
And knowing is half the battle.
G.I. Joe!
The Turtles' origin has still been changed a bit, which is fine by me. Personally, I don't want to see the exact same story told over and over. But the changes they made are questionable. For one thing, they decided to tie April's and the Turtles' backstories together. Apparently, April O'Neil's father was a brilliant scientist who experimented on the Turtles, as well as Splinter the Rat, who eventually becomes their surrogate father, back when April was a kid, and she used to make videos documenting the experiments. By the way, how did she get a camcorder with Bluetooth 15 years ago? Well, anyway, one day there was an accident in the lab, more on that later, and Mr. O'Neill tragically died in the fire. April managed to get the Turtles and Splinter out alive, and she dumped them into the sewer. Why the hell would she do that? Wouldn't her first instinct be to take them home? In previous versions of the story, the Turtles were accidentally dropped into the sewer, but in this version, April does it on purpose? Well, now that I've gone through the trouble of rescuing you from certain doom, I'm going to dump you down a storm drain.
Well, when you put it like that, it sounds ridiculous.
It makes no sense at all, and I'm not even sure why they wanted to connect April's and the Turtles' backstories together. It just seems unnecessary. William Fichtner is still in the movie and still playing Eric Sachs, although they changed the H in his name to a K, which looks ridiculous. And he runs a company called Sachs Industry, or Sachs Industries, or Sachs Group Limited. The name keeps changing throughout the movie. But yeah, wouldn't you love to do business with Sachs Industry? You know they will always give you great Sachs. Oh, come on, you were all thinking it. But thankfully, Eric Sachs is no longer the Shredder. Instead, he's Shredder's student/lackey/partner. I don't know, it's not explained very well. Shredder is now this guy. I'm not sure if his name is supposed to be Oroku Saki because it's never mentioned in the movie, they just call him Shredder, but at least he's Japanese. It certainly looks like this change was made after shooting had already begun and very hastily. Shredder only shows up outside his armor in 3 very short scenes, all of which take place in the same dark room. And during a scene where Sachs is revealing his evil plan to the recently captured Turtles just before he kills them, much like a James Bond villain, anytime he mentions Shredder by name, he's conveniently off camera, suggesting the lines were added or altered in ADR.
In a few hours, Shredder is going to unleash all that stuff over the whole city. Shredder will force this city to live under our rule.
Also, when Shredder and the Foot Clan attack the Turtles' lair, Splinter already seems to know who he is, even though he seemingly has no connection to Shredder in this movie. Or if he does, it's never explained. But Splinter does have a connection to Sachs since he worked with April's father during their experiments on the Turtles up until the tragic accident, so Splinter could conceivably know Shredder if it was Sachs. And there's also the fact that Shredder is Sachs in the movie tie-in game on the Nintendo 3DS. So yeah, this is clearly not how the script originally played out, and they did not do a good job of hiding it. The end result is kinda confusing, and the Eric Sachs character just ends up being superfluous. Shredder appears to have the means to carry out his evil plans on his own, so his reason for working with Sachs is... what exactly? I almost have to wonder if the part Sachs ended up playing in the story was originally intended for Baxter Stockman back when Sachs was still the Shredder. Stockman, a well-known character from the Turtles Rogues Gallery, is actually in the movie. See? There he is. And yes, that's the only time he appears. And yet, this was apparently enough for his name to appear in the credits. Seems a bit odd, don't you think? Surely the character must have had some importance to the plot at one time to be worthy of a credit. Or maybe the actor just has a very good agent. Well, let's take a look at the characters who do have a significant amount of screen time, starting with our titular heroes. The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles were originally named by their master Splinter after his favorite Renaissance painters, although I guess in this version they were named by Dr. O'Neill, and fuck if I know why he chose these names. Leonardo is the fearless leader, Raphael is the angry badass, Donatello is the nerd, and Michelangelo is the goofball. For the most part, the movie gets the Turtles' personalities right, and the voice acting is quite well done. Though they did have a few lines from Mikey that made him sound a little creepier than I think they intended.
Oh, she's so hot I can feel my shell tightening.
Ew, Mikey. I did not need to hear that.
I'm sorry, that came across super creepy, okay?
You think? As for the Turtles' appearance, well... from a technical standpoint, they do actually look pretty good. Of course, I prefer practical effects whenever possible, and the work they did on the turtle costumes in the original movie was amazing. They made the right call bringing Jim Henson on board because I don't think anybody else could have pulled this off as well as he did. And if you want proof, just watch the third movie. Actually, I take that back. Don't watch the third movie. Seriously, don't. It's awful. But nowadays, CGI is often the simpler and less expensive option. And let's face it, we all knew from the day this movie was announced that they'd be doing the Turtles in CGI. And I was okay with this. CGI technology has come a long way, and when done right, looks incredibly lifelike. and the 2014 movie is no exception. Industrial Light and Magic, who also animated the Transformers for Michael Bay, did an incredible job here. The level of detail on these characters is amazing, and they did some brilliant motion capture work on the faces. So I have no complaints for the technicians. Now, as far as artistic design, I don't know. Something about the turtles just looks wrong. It's the noses, isn't it? Yeah, it's definitely the noses. Jesus, they do look like aliens. Even the Nickelodeon cartoon made fun of how ridiculous they looked. And I think they may have gotten a little carried away with the accessories. I know, you gotta sell the new toys to go with the movie because merchandising! But, God, it's just too much. I mean, does Donatello really need all this, whatever the hell he's carrying? And why do they have shoes? And where did they find shoes big enough? The turtles are like 10 feet tall in this movie. And why does Raphael have sunglasses? He never actually wears them over his eyes, they just sit on top of his head. And somehow they stay on his head even when he's being catapulted into a fucking Humvee. Are they surgically grafted to his skull or something? Kudos to the design team for trying to be creative, but guys, sometimes less is more. And this movie needed much, much less. And then we have our human characters. Well, calling them characters is a bit of a stretch. They're more like cardboard stand-ins. This space right here, this is where the character was supposed to go. But instead, we have a walking, talking, emotionless robot. The Turtles' personalities are perhaps a bit limited, and there isn't a shred of character development to be found here, but at least they have something that resembles a personality. They're CGI creations drawn over motion capture stand-ins, and yet they feel more real than the humans. And I expect this from Megan Fox because I'm half convinced she actually is a robot. But how the hell did this movie manage to make Will Arnett so lifeless? He's normally a very funny guy, and for crying out loud, he's playing Vernon Fenwick. Now, if you're not familiar with the original cartoon series, Vernon Fenwick was April's cameraman and sometimes her rival or ally, depending on the situation. And he plays a similar part in the movie, although he spends less time trying to get April's job and more time trying to get in her pants. Now, in the cartoon, Vernon was a slimy little bastard and extremely flamboyant.
Oh, this is impossible! I'm a sensitive artist!
Well, there's no need to get catty.
She's onto a big story. She's not going to beat me out of this one. No! Oh, yucky poo!
But in the 2014 movie, he's mostly just boring. And the only time he's not boring is when he's creepily hitting on April. Yeah, it's pretty clear this character is Vernon Fenwick in name only. I don't know if this was a directorial decision, or if the script just didn't give him much to work with, or if he was suffering from a severe case of don't give a shit-itis, but good lord, this performance is disappointing. This version of Vernon has the personality of a 2x4, and that should never be the case with any character, but especially not with Vernon fucking Fenwick. What the hell were they thinking? And speaking of what the hell were they thinking, what is he putting on that sandwich? I see mustard and Parmesan? And nothing else? Is this actually a thing? Is there some kind of mustard and Parmesan sandwich craze going on that I'm just not aware of? But anyway, there is nothing interesting about this Vernon in name-only character, and he is completely pointless. And even the movie seems to be aware of this. Just before the climax of the film, there's this action scene that takes place up in the mountains, which, to be fair, is actually a lot of fun to watch, and it ends with Leonardo, April, and Vernon going over the edge of a cliff. And this is Michelangelo's reaction.
Poor Leo, April, and that other guy. They were so young, so beautiful.
They ain't dead, numbnuts.
Yeah, that's pretty much all he is. That other guy. April isn't much better of a character, and even if she wasn't played by Megan Fox, that would still be the case. She does at least serve something of a purpose to the story, but most of the time it seems like that purpose is to act like a crazy person. She spends most of the first act trying to put together a story on the Foot Clan, a criminal organization that's been terrorizing the city of late, and when she happens to discover a crime in progress at the docks, her first instinct is to call the newsroom and ask them to send a camera crew. And she calls no one else. You know, you're a news reporter, this is potentially a big story, you want to make sure you document everything. I get that. But maybe, just maybe, mind you, there's someone else you should call? Someone that might have a big interest in this massive burglary going on? Someone like, oh gee, I don't know, let me think, the police? Oh, ha ha ha, fuck off. And of course, no one else at the network shares her interest in this story, including and especially her boss. Speaking of which, oh hi Whoopi Goldberg. But this doesn't stop her from trying to dig up more info on the Foot Clan and the mysterious vigilantes that keep getting in their way. And when she finally discovers the vigilantes' true identities, she of course has to go back to her boss and tell her the whole story, no matter how insane it sounds. Now just imagine, if you will, that you were in charge of a newsroom at a major network, and one of your reporters, who is already on double secret probation for her past transgressions, comes to you and tells you she has discovered the identities of vigilantes that have been fighting a local terrorist organization. And these vigilantes are her former pets, who are now 10 feet tall and can speak English. And they're ninjas.
Well, when you put it like that, it sounds ridiculous.
And that is exactly what April does. Not kidding. Naturally, in the real world, if you were her boss, you would fire her ass on the spot. But of course, in the movie, her boss fires her on the spot. I'll be damned. Something happened in this movie that actually made sense. I did not see that coming. Okay, take a shot. And now let's move on to the villains. Oh, where do I begin? Like any TMNT movie, the Turtles and Splinter are fighting against the nefarious Foot Clan, a gang of ninja thieves and assassins from Japan led by the Shredder. Except in this movie, they aren't ninjas. They're just regular, old-fashioned, machine gun-toting terrorists. In every previous incarnation of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the Foot Clan have always been ninjas. That was the entire point of Splinter training them in the art of ninjutsu, so they would have the skills to challenge Shredder and the Foot Clan. How exactly does the story benefit from making the Foot Soldiers just generic terrorists? It occurs to me there is a distinct lack of ninja in this movie. Odd, considering the word is in the fucking title, and that was part of the title they wanted to keep. The Foot Clan are, as always, led by the Shredder. There's not much to say about the character, really. As I said, including the man who may or may not be Oroku Saki in this movie was a last-minute decision. He certainly looks intimidating enough. He keeps to the shadows, he has scars all over his face, and he can kick some serious ass. And he managed to work this famous line into the movie, albeit in Japanese. But then he puts on the armor. Oh, God almighty, the armor. No, guys, what are you doing? Oh, God, no, why? He looks like he's wearing the Iron Throne. And now he's throwing the blades and pulling them back magnetically like they're fucking boomerangs? Come on, you can't get more over the top than this. Even Super Shredder from Secret of the Ooze didn't look this ridiculous. This looks like something out of Transformers, not TMNT. Again, less is more. Much less. Then there's Karai, a character who has shown up several times in this franchise as a high-ranking member of the Foot Clan and often with some sort of personal connection to the Shredder. In the 2014 movie, she's just another terrorist. There's nothing remarkable about her at all, she's just there. Karai is another in-name only character, and her inclusion in this film just seems like pointless fan service. Perhaps, like I suspect of Baxter Stockman, she was originally supposed to have a much bigger part before the rewrites. But if this is how her character was always supposed to be, then I really have to wonder why they bothered. You could give this character any other name or no name at all, and nothing would change. And finally, we have not the Shredder, Eric Sachs, the superfluous second fiddle to the real villain, yet he walks around acting like he is the real villain because, again, they didn't do a very good job of hiding the rewrites. And like so many humans in this movie, there's not much to his character except evil. And stupid. He's very stupid. Yeah, can we talk about this jackass's master plan for world domination? Because it makes the Shredder's plans from the 1987 cartoon look brilliant by comparison. And that is saying something. At some point, Shredder and the Foot Clan manage to capture 3 of the Turtles. Raphael and Splinter are presumed dead, but of course these buffoons don't bother to check, allowing Raphael to save the day later on. But anyway, Sax intends to release a powerful toxin into the air from the spire on top of his corporate headquarters in New York City, which will kill thousands of people. This will cause a widespread panic and turn New York into a quarantine zone until Sax Industry will miraculously discover the cure for this toxin. And said cure is apparently the mutagen flowing through the turtle's blood.
Everybody got that? Good!
Sax actually planned to do this years ago when he and Dr. O'Neill were experimenting on Splinter and the Turtles, but Dr. O'Neill discovered his evil plans and put a stop to them using the kill everything with fire technique. For many years, everyone assumed Dr. O'Neill perished in the flames, but we later discovered that wasn't the case. I couldn't tell you how, as it's never explained, but Sax evidently killed Dr. O'Neill. Somehow.
You killed my father.
Prepare to die.
Fortunately for Mr. Sax, April saved the animals' lives and now his master plan can be revived.
The government will then send Sax Industry a blank check, and I'm gonna be rich. Like, stupid rich.
Oh, Saki, Saki, Saki. For a brilliant genetic scientist, you're kind of a moron. First of all, while you have sufficiently demonstrated the power of the toxin, you've given us no indication that your antidote will even work. Yet you're ready to put this plan into action as soon as you start extracting the turtle's blood. Second, if you're releasing the toxin from one location, logically people should start dying in a radius around that location. If Sax Tower is at the center of that radius, people are probably going to start asking questions and may hesitate before writing you that blank check. Third, the toxin is a clearly visible red mist. I'm pretty sure someone will notice this. And finally, what do you mean you're gonna be rich?
Like, stupid rich.
Dude, you're already, like, stupid rich. You run what appears to be a very successful genetics corporation that is not in any way hurting for cash. You are capable of funding your own private militia. For God's sake, you own a fucking castle in the hills. In what universe does this not qualify as, like, stupid rich? And if you want to take over New York City, why does it have to involve poisoning people? Can't you just bribe the local politicians like everybody else? This nonsense comes to a head in the movie's climax when Shredder goes to the top of Sax Tower to begin spreading the toxin. This requires a countdown. Because of course it does. And Sax takes a sample of the turtle's blood to the tower to start extracting the mutagen. Naturally, the turtles go after Shredder, leaving our stupid humans to go after Sax. Calling the police is apparently not an option. Where are the cops anyway? They're in New York City, surely there must be one or two of them around somewhere. I know in some versions of the TMNT, the cops are depicted as incompetent, like the first movie, for example, but at least they are depicted. Anyway, while the turtles engage in a very silly yet kind of fun battle with the Shredder on the roof, Sax gets taken out by Vern and April remarkably easily, mainly because it never occurred to him to bring any Foot Clan troops into the lab with him for security. All he had was a single handgun. That's it. That man is stupid. Like, stupid. The turtles manage to stop the countdown, but Shredder responds by cutting down the tower to release the toxin the hard way. Again, this will probably make it painfully obvious that Sax was to blame for the toxin. But when you wear a suit of armor like this, subtlety is probably not one of your strengths. April then runs up to the roof and reveals to Shredder that she has the mutagen. I'm not sure why. What exactly was her plan here? Did she go up to the roof just to run up to the Shredder and start singing and dancing, na 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 na, I got the mutagen? I'm pretty sure Shredder's reaction is going to be, well, thank you for bringing it to me. Yoink! And yeah, that's exactly what happens. You really didn't think this through, did you? But the turtles grab April before she falls to her death, and with one giant swing, April delivers the final blow that sends Shredder plummeting to the earth below. That's right. April is the one who finishes off the Shredder. Fucking April. Now don't misunderstand, I am all in favor of female empowerment. But wouldn't it be slightly more effective to do this with a character that's worth just a bit more than the stuff I scraped off my shoe this morning? Just a thought. And then the tower falls to the street with our heroes, but somehow everyone survives. Because reasons. And the fall doesn't release the toxin like they feared it would, so hooray for false tension! And the city is saved and the Shredder is defeated. Or is he? Well, of course he's alive. They gotta save something for the sequel. Well, here are my final thoughts on the film. The acting is hit and miss, the special effects are excellent, the action sequences are good, mindless fun, and despite my misgivings about the director, the movie is at least adequately shot, though it does suffer from one glaring problem. Or should I say, one flaring problem. Liebsman apparently attended the J.J. Abrams School of Directing because we got lens flare here, lens flare there, lens flare every fucking where. God damn it, J.J., you see what you've started? And what more can I say about the plot? It makes no sense at all. The origins of the turtles, the actions of the heroes, the villains' evil plans, the ridiculously improbable survival at the end, all of it is completely ridiculous. But really, when you think about it, hasn't this franchise always been kind of stupid? And I'm saying this as a lifelong TMNT fan. This franchise has always been a joke. And that was the intention from the beginning. The original comic by Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird was originally supposed to be a one-off parody of other popular comics at the time, like Daredevil, and they never expected it to become the mega franchise it is today. They would have been happy just to sell enough copies of that first issue to pay back the money they borrowed from Eastman's uncle to cover the publishing costs. But somehow it caught on, and here we are 30 years later, and the Turtles are no less ridiculous, and yet still a license to print money. So really, the plot for this movie gave us exactly what we should have expected based on the history of the franchise. So does that mean this movie is good? Pfft, of course not. It's bad. But honestly, it's not anywhere near as bad as I thought it'd be. I wouldn't even call it the worst movie in the franchise. The third movie still holds that title. There are many things the filmmakers could have done better, but if you enjoy this movie as a guilty pleasure, you could do worse.
Help, I'm a turtle and I can't get up.
Far worse. Next time, we'll take a look at another ridiculous story from the animal kingdom, but until then, I am the Smeghead, and Hollywood can suck it.
That was one fabuloso flick.
Yeah. You know, somebody ought to make a movie about us.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Oh, it's got a nice ring to it.
Be careful what you wish for.